Who are in the audience here at the conference center, and I see you are still coming in. Just asking you to observe the physical distancing, so ensure that a couple chairs are between yourself and the next person closest to you, and just use up on the other side for me, please. Welcome also to persons online. Last check, I understand that we have close to 80 persons, 70 high, close to 80 persons online, young leaders, and you are drawn from all areas of society, all parishes across the country, and hopefully multiple communities representing various interests, activities, initiatives, lobbying efforts, but all in the interest of advancing the prospects of young people, youth development, communities, and by extension, country. So you are nation builders, and you are nation builders at a particular point in your lives where you have the energy, you are exuberant, you are adventurous, and you are committed to your cause, whatever that cause is. And in this instance, we know it's all for positivity and for good. You are also in a somewhat unique position, and that is that you are supported sufficiently by your peers, your age cohort, to be elevated to the status of being the leader among your peers. So whether it is the service club that you lead, or the police youth club, or the sports club, or the tertiary education club, or the farmers group, or any other such entity, the fact that others saw in you the potential to provide leadership, guidance, advice, boldness, bravery, initiative, capacity, that in and of itself qualifies you, I believe, to be termed a key influencer in our society. That's a big term. An influencer means that you have the ability to influence others. You don't determine a phrase by putting the same word in the phrase, so that's my bad. So influencer means you have the ability to motivate others, to get persons to agree with you, to get them to see things your way, to drive direction, influence action and behavior. Sometimes we don't think about it. Sometimes we take it for granted that people ask you what's your advice about something, or elect you in an election of your peers, or depend on you to come with the initiative and the idea, or expect you to defend the initiative and the idea, and indeed to defend them as they pursue those initiatives and ideas. But stop a little and think about it. What it really means is that you have the potential to change things. And one of the things I wish and advise young people to do, and I was young once, I'm getting up there now, right? Not exactly there yet, but I'm getting there. One of the things I advise young people to do, and I used to be very involved. I'm now Minister of Health and Wellness. I used to be president of the drama club, president of the debating society, house captain, best high school in Jamaica, by the way, Manchester High. Anybody went to Manchester High School? What? At least one in the audience? Two? Excellent. All the other schools are good too, but Manchester High is the best. I'm just kidding. We're all good. I was head boy. Then I went to university. I was head of the Debating Society, president of Management Studies Association, vice president of the Guild of Undergraduates. And as I evolved as a young person, clearly, some people felt that I could provide some leadership. Today, I'm a member of parliament and, of course, a minister of government. And not saying how I traveled to brag in any way, shape, or form. I'm saying it to make a point to all of you. Every single one of you in this audience and all of you in technology land have the potential to be the next Minister of Health and Wellness, the next Prime Minister, the next head of a corporation, the next head of the Cancer Society or the Heart Foundation, the head of the university, the head of your own business. It's the way life is. We are only on the stage for a while, and we're replaced by others. And I make that point to say that given where you are and where every single one of you are likely to be in the next decade or so, perhaps before, it is in all our interests to invest in ensuring that when it is our time at the wheel, we inherit something that we can travel with. Not a broke down bus, but a bus that's traveling. You're going to improve it because that's what life is about. But you want to inherit something that gives you a good start. So that leadership that you possess today, in a sense, is a critical investment for tomorrow. And it's an investment for tomorrow to carry through the legacy that you have based on the vision that you have for yourself and for those you lead. But it's also an important legacy and is defined as such more sharply when you would have created something better for those who are coming behind you. Because you can start identifying the little leaders in primary school too, and prep school, right? You see, life is a continuum. There's no, you start and end a chapter, you start another one, but life really just goes on. And that's what it's all about. And you place yourself in the context of what it is. So much for the philosophy lesson this morning, right? I'm saying that to say welcome to all of you. We are here today from a public health perspective now, public health context, to encourage our young people by providing a basis and a forum for our young leaders to understand the public health challenges of the day and to define, in whatever context they provide leadership, a role for leadership to advance public health. And to advance public health in your own interests, in the interests of your followers, your entities, your organizations, and by extension in the interest of the community. And in a sense, we have an obligation to do that. Now, public health is not, when you talk about health, if you're not careful, you send a signal to the listener that it is just about clinical science, right? You get a sense that it's just about doctors and nurses and persons who can write prescriptions or fill them. You get a sense as if it's about when you're sick, you go to the doctor and you need hospital beds and you need doctors to serve you. But public health is so much more than that. I'm a social scientist. Don't ask me to write your prescription, even though they call me Dr. Tufton, because you would die. I wouldn't know what to write, right? And one of the things that I've tried to combine in my stewardship as Minister of Health with the natural sciences is the people, the behavioral science with the clinical science. Public health is as much about behavioral science as it is clinical or natural sciences. Why? Because most of the challenges we have today in public health are linked to how people behave in their natural environment. The NCD epidemic that we have. NCD meaning non-communicable diseases. Diseases that are primarily influenced by lifestyle, hypertension or high blood pressure, cardiovascular disease, cancers are linked by consumption habits, too much salt, too much sugar, too much fats, alcohol, smoking. They are linked by inactivity, lack of exercise. 30 minutes a day keeps the doctor away, is what we say. Or they are linked by not even knowing your health status, so you don't know how to manage that health status. Dengue, caused by the Aedes aegypti mosquito, is primarily the source of mosquito breeding sites. You know, the empty milk tin in the back of your yard, the used tire, the drain that's not clean. That's where the mosquito breed up. That's where it all starts. And they just come in on you. And guess what? Most of the breeding sites, 70% of breeding sites are found in and around the home. So when the dengue break out and you seek medical attention, oftentimes we overlook the breeding sites. COVID clearly is grounded in the natural sciences, and there are many theories around it, and we can talk about that later on. But ultimately, the extent to which COVID represents a risk to us is the extent to which we take certain actions or fail to take certain actions to protect ourselves and our community. So we tell people about wearing the masks, but we tell them about the social distancing or physical distancing, the sanitization, what COVID has done. And by the way, no one on earth has ever seen anything like this since 100 years ago, the Spanish flu. When the world has been brought to its knees, to pause, to stop, because of a highly contagious virus called COVID-19. And essentially, a lot of the prevention methods are linked to behavior. And that's really what the real challenge is, because behavior is a more difficult task. It's not a precise science. It's linked to habits and culture. And all habits normally die very hard, take long to change. Except in the case of young people who can learn new tricks and new habits and pursue those dreams over time, which is why you are so important in this COVID fight. So we are here today because the Ministry of Health and Wellness, the government, and indeed the country needs the engagement of this young leaders group to understand the COVID message and to define a role and play your part in that message. Now, what does this statistics say quickly? And I'm creating context because we have an interesting or more interesting set of speakers to come who can give you better insights. So right now we have more young persons having the COVID virus. 2,320 positive cases are persons between 10 and 30 years. 2,320 cases so far. We have had 614 cases that are between 60 and 69 years old. 32 of those have died. 556 cases of persons 70 years and older. 82 of them have died, unfortunately. And 2,320 cases, persons 10 and 30 years old, only 4 have died. You want that stat again? It tells a story. The older you get, the more you have comorbidities, underlying conditions, the more susceptible you are to the COVID virus. Again, I say, 2,320 cases positive, 10 to 30 years, only 4 died. 556, 70 years and older, 82 died. 614, 60 to 69, and 32 have died. So and by the way, this is our data, but it's a statistic that is universal. The older you get, the more you're susceptible to the COVID virus. Now, that says a lot in and of itself, but it says more, and it requires greater assessment and analysis, because while it is true that more young people get COVID, it's the older people who die, greater proportion. Young people, therefore, if we're not careful, may feel like this virus is not my virus. This is not my business, because the truth is, the chances of my succumbing. Maintain the physical distancing for me now, sir. Some chairs on this side. Come over on this side for me. Just come over on this side for me. We have to maintain the protocol. We don't want to be shut down by the laws that we implemented. It wouldn't look so good if we're not abiding by them, right? So the point is that the older population suffer the consequences more. And if we're not careful, young people may actually think that they don't need to be as careful or cautious. The truth is, young people are experiencing the trauma of COVID too, because they are being restricted through the curfew measures, through the work from home measures, through the suspension of the parties. That is a natural tendency and desire to enjoy. So we're all victims of COVID. We're all victims of COVID. Let's accept that. But the degrees of risks, certainly as it relates to fatalities, are greater in the older population. And one of the things that we don't want to be transmitted is that because we are young, we shouldn't worry too much about it. Why? Because young people have the potential to die too, as low as those numbers are. But young people also have a great potential to transmit the virus to older people. I don't think any of us don't love our grandmothers and grandfathers and uncles and mother and father. And the truth is, we have had cases where children have transferred the virus to their parents, and those persons have actually died from it. And that's something we have to guard against. And it doesn't have to be our biological older people, just people that we come in contact with each day, at the workplace, in the streets, at church, wherever. So that's one big message that we have to learn from. Beyond that, because we are now in a phase called community transmission, COVID is everywhere. You really don't know where it is at this stage. And we had expected that we would get here. That's how the virus has traveled in phases. And what community transmission says is that you could have the person sitting next to you who is positive. They may be asymptomatic. They have no signs of the virus. They're not coughing, sneezing. They don't have a temperature, but they have it. And if you do not take precaution, they do not take the precaution, then they could transfer the virus to you. If you're talking too close and droplets move from your mouth, which is very natural, we don't see it, but it happens. So most times we don't see it. And it's inhaled by the next person, lodges in the nostril, it finds its way into the lungs, and you have COVID. And so even when you don't think the person is positive, it is important that we assume that everybody is potentially a carrier. Very important message. And by extension, therefore, follow the protocol. Protecting yourself, protecting others. That's why the mask is so important. That's why the physical distancing is so important. That's why the constant sanitizing is so important. Beyond that, because it is everywhere, and because the restrictions are so great, there are many around us, and this is a substantive point, who are having a very difficult time coping with the COVID virus environment. So you're at a stage now where COVID, even when you comply with what are the best practices to avoid getting the virus or transmitting the virus, you are now having to confront the side effects of the policies and programs to prevent you from getting COVID. What is one of the greatest side effects of the COVID protocol? Mental health issues. It's not easy for someone who is accustomed to getting up every day and walking around the field, going to supermarket, doing them little shopping, calling up them friend to visit or their friends coming over, to be told that since you're 65, you have to stay home unless you have to go out. And indeed, if you look at studies that have been done, Professor Eldemire Shearer, who does work in this area, who interviewed 228 participants 65 years and older, you will see the results suggesting that they are leaving home much less. 89% reported that they are staying at home since March. 98% complying with the mask wearing, sanitizing. Some are canceling their doctor's visits. Some have relatives who are no longer visiting them because they are fearful that they'll give them COVID if they have it, family members, or they are so preoccupied with their children who are staying at home they don't have time for mommy or daddy, grandma or grandpa. Some are not moving, so they are losing their sense of motion. And then loneliness sets in, depression sets in, sickness sets in, and the consequences of that is a society that has and is experiencing COVID protocol fatigue. COVID protocol fatigue, which has negative consequences on their mental state, ultimately leading to negative consequences on their physical state. Those are real issues. And that's why I say to people, and I'm saying to you as young leaders, this COVID thing is a big deal. It is a big deal. It is a big deal on our society, land life as we know it. It is a big deal on the world, and it requires leadership and participation at all levels of our population. The response, therefore, to the COVID challenge has to be multifaceted. And hence, you're being in the room today, because what we're trying to do in public health is to generate, through a call, a rallying cry for the entire society to engage by first understanding what COVID is about and then defining and playing a role. It's an exciting time to be alive, even in the face of the crisis. Because if we do it right, we're going to be a stronger and more resilient society. And as young leaders, you're going to be better leaders for tomorrow and the future. It's a good time to exercise your authority and the influence that you have to steer people in the right direction. Because COVID is classified by fear and anxiety. And by the way, that fear and anxiety is not just in the 65 and over. Young people are experiencing it too. Many young people. A UNICEF report speaks to that, was recently, the preliminary report anyway, published. And we have persons here who will speak more to that later on. So we want to create this army of young leaders. We want to leverage or piggyback on your existing organization and the influence that you have. We are saying to you, rise up and provide leadership in a way that you have never done before to help to be a voice for this COVID response, to get Jamaicans to understand the importance of the protocols, to help Jamaicans with coping mechanisms for those who are lonely and suffering in silence, for those who can't go to the supermarket because they are afraid. Help them out and make your organization provide a little service that can go shop for them and carry it and deliver. Sit with them and listen. You'll be surprised how much listening is therapeutic. Every one of you know about somebody who is 60 or 70 in your community and knows that they live alone. And if you decided to put on a little T-shirt and say, we are part of the COVID team, and we're going to sit down with Miss John or Miss Jane today, and we're just going to have a conversation. We're going to social distance, we're going to wear the mask, but we'll just have a conversation. We're going to help her to pick up her medication or call the helpline if we think that she's so unstable that she needs very professional help. In fact, we want to launch what is called a community COVID conversation. We have the larger one that we do every Thursday, where 6 persons, including a leader, will sit under a tree on a veranda, see it almost as their duty a couple times a week to just provide an opportunity for conversation and discussion. And you would be surprised how much you would motivate if you were to do that. So today is the launch of this group. And what is the end result? Hopefully, after it is all over, you will, one, have an understanding of where we are in the COVID response. Hopefully, I would have started that by providing a context. 2, you would be motivated and willing and express that willingness to participate in a more organized approach to selling that message, sending out that message. 3, you will provide leadership on the ground in your own setting. We're not even giving you more work. We're saying in your leadership forum. Just tag it on the agenda that you already have, whichever agenda you represent at the community level or otherwise. And say we have to have a COVID element on our agenda. If you want to do more, fine, but at least at that level. And we will provide you with the guidance by giving you the information. We would love to establish a communication mechanism, whether a chat group or something. And every time you do something, let it motivate others. So I like the hashtags, I like the tagging, I like the social media uploads, just to show what being your brother's keeper can be in helping out this COVID fight. Just to show what the message that I repeat every day, if you join me in that chorus and repeat that message and push that message, how it can help. I want to be your best friend. Public health wants to align with you. Can I get an amen for that? I wanted you to smile, but I can't see the smiles under the mask. That's the problem. But I want to work with you. And I want you to work with me. And when I say me, I mean the broader sense of public health around the COVID response. We will provide you with information. We'll provide you with the infrastructure at the community level through our health centers, through our hospitals. We have community health aides that go out in the field every single day. We have mental health aides that go out in the field every single day. I want to brand you as part of the Young COVID Ambassador Corps to be a part of this. And let me tell you, it has personal benefits for you, because in doing so, you're protecting yourself, you're protecting your family, you're protecting your community. It has personal benefits in terms of your experience as leaders on the ground. It has personal benefits in terms of expanding your knowledge capacity around some of these public health and behavioral issues. And I think it clearly benefits the society and the cause that we are embarking on. So I want to thank you again. Again, I say, let the world know that you are part of this once we decide to go this route. And, tag me on everything that you do that represents a positive message and contribution to the COVID fight. So today we're going to quickly go into a few presentations, and then you'll have a chance to ask your questions and comments. I want to introduce two persons, three actually, who will be presenting briefly. Dr. Kellyanne Dixon Hamill, lead researcher and lecturer in the Department of Economics at the UWI, who will look at the impact of COVID-19 on children and adolescents. Dr. Judith Leiber, Director of Child, Adolescent and Mental Health at the Ministry of Health and Wellness, will present on coping strategies for youth during COVID-19. And Dr. Abigail Harrison, who is the lone professor in the room, social distancing also at the same time, that's good, who is a consultant pediatrician and adolescent medicine specialist. And she's going to look at the role of youth and young leaders during the COVID-19. And then after that, we go into some general discussions. You can write down your questions if you have any. And then we will close with a little call to action. And at that stage, I'm sure you'll be in a position to make your decision one way or the other. We're clearly not forcing anyone to do anything. We're happy you're here. That is an indication of interest. And what we're saying is, we give you information. You decide how you want to use that in the interests of humanity and society. Thank you very much. And we're going to go right now into Dr. Dixon Hamill. Is she online? Okay, she's doing a PowerPoint presentation, I'm assuming, right? Share her screen. So you're going to look at the screens. Well, this one, I'll look at that one. And then the presentation will begin. Thank you very much again for coming. Looking forward. And the presentations will be relatively brief. It's like 10 minutes per presentation or so. So it's not going to be too long. We'll reserve most of it for conversation after. Thank you. Dr. Hamill, Dixon Hamill, can I hear your voice online? Gentlemen, technical directors, is she on? She's on. I want to hear her voice, though. We're not hearing anything. I'm hoping that you would have done all the trial runs before. Can you respond to her to say you are hearing, but it's just that she's not on the mic? Put her on, not the mic, sorry, the speakers. By the way, I'm happy in the meantime while they try to sort that out. I'm really happy to see all of you. I mean, the room is... If we have any more persons, we might have to put you in the gallery, at the top there, because I think we're just about perfect in terms of the physical distancing and well decked out. Who are those persons in the red? I see the UWI crest, but do you represent what? The Guild or the Guild? Okay, all right. You have an army there, okay. We should have asked for some general introduction of organizations. When you're ready, you let me know. Can we get some quick, just tell us which organization you represent while they try to sort out that. Just press the button in front of you there. The red one there, right there, yeah. And when the red light comes on, you can speak. Just who you are, what organization, quickly.
Hello, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Shamar Woodaber. I'm actually representing both UESTAT and as well as JMVY today.
JUDY is who?
JMVY.
Huh?
JMVY.
Oh, JMDY, okay,
so
gotcha.
UESTAT.
Right.
All right, good afternoon. My name is Jamoy Phillips, and I'm representing UESTAT today.
Let's talk loud, you next.
Hello, everybody. My name is Janice Howell. I'm representing the National Youth Parliament of Jamaica and also Generation 2000.
Okay, great. Behind here, turn on your, just click the thing in front of you, yeah. Light not coming on? Try the other one. No? All right, tell me who you are. Rural Jamaica, meaning which parish? West Portland and National Youth Parliament. Yes, sir. You have to press it a little longer and see if it comes up. No? Yeah? All right.
Good afternoon, everyone. I am David Salmon. I'm from Kingston, and I'm representing the National Youth Parliament of Jamaica.
Youth Parliament, okay. Okay, lift. Yeah, the conference center needs a little upgrade. Go ahead, just speak loud. Okay, great. Yes, ma'am? Okay, great. Okay.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Livingston Doheny, and I represent Norman Manley Law School.
Law school, you look like a barrister. Go ahead.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Cheyenne Hilton, and I am representing the Norman Manley Law School Students Association.
Thank you. Turn off the mics when you're finished, please. Turn off both of them, because it affects the other one. Yes, sir.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Nathaniel Amour, and I sit as the president of the Norman Manley Law School Students Association.
All right. Well, we have some big legal representation here. Turn off the mic for me. Guys, tell me when this thing is, when you're ready. People at the back. Yeah. Go ahead.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Danielle Watson, and I also represent the Norman Manley Law School Students Association.
Okay, great.
Hello, everyone. My name is Nat Anderson, and I'm representing both UMONA Guild and the USTAT.
Okay. No, I think you represent JIS, right? Yeah. You don't look so youthful, to be honest with you. Go ahead, Miss at the back.
Good afternoon. My name is Sarah Barham, and I represent JMVY.
Okay.
Hello, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jana Mason, and I represent the JMVY as well.
Okay.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Miko Anemar, and I represent the UMONA Guild.
Guild, yeah. The other three folks to the extreme back there.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Genevieve Watson, and I represent the UMONA Guild.
Right. I think all the red shirts are UMONA, but go ahead and just say your name.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Onali Laris, UMONA Guild.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Cadel Green, Chancellor Hall Chairman, and I represent the UMONA Guild.
All right. Let's start here now. Are you ready now? The volumes. Let her speak now so I can hear that she's... Hello? Yes, you have to do better than that, you guys. Go ahead. Okay.
Afternoon, everyone. I'm Everton Ratcher, president of the Jamaica Union of Tertiary Students.
President of Jamaica Union of Tertiary Students. Very good. Yes, miss.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Arian Oxford, and I'm representing the National Youth Parliament of Jamaica.
Okay.
Greetings, everyone. My name is Ashley Onfur, and I represent USTAT Mona.
Okay.
Good day, everyone. Can you hear me? Nice. Good day, everyone. My name is Ashley Brady, and I'm representing JMVY.
Afternoon, everyone. My name is Damon Scarlett, and I'm presenting the national youth body of my church.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Javon Small, president of the Portsmouth Youth Association.
Portsmouth Youth Association. Very well. Good to have you. And over further to the back, miss.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Tashana Thomas, and I'm representing JMVY.
Okay. You're ready now? Well, let me hear her speak so I can know.
Hello, good afternoon, Minister. Are you now hearing?
I am now hearing you. Thank you very much. We missed you a lot.
Wonderful.
Just control the volume for me so it's not too loud, but enough for us to hear. All right, you want to share your screen, Doc, and then proceed? Thank you very much for coming on.
No problem. I'm currently sharing, so you should be able to see.
Yes, we're seeing now loud and clear. Thank you. So, guys, let's welcome and thank. Go ahead.
Perfect and wonderful. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm so happy to share with you today. Minister Tufton has set the stage, and my role here is to just give you an idea of how COVID has been affecting. So, we conducted a study, Capri, in conjunction with UNICEF, to look at the impacts or examine the impacts of the pandemic on children, specifically in Jamaica, and to determine the capacity for us to respond in this situation. we conducted a survey of 505 households with children. So the household had to have at least one child, and this was conducted between mid-June to mid. Some interviews were done online, while others were done, the majority, 70% of them, were done using interview-assisted telephone interviews. So what did we find out? There are three main areas that I want to focus on today. The impact on children as it relates to mental health, to food shortages, and that would be directly related to the income of those in the household, and of course, the closure of schools. So what we're seeing here is we got information about change in certain emotions that those in the household would have noticed in children. So please bear in mind that we only interviewed adults, so those over 18 in the household. So they will be reporting what they're seeing. And what we found was concerning, because as you can see, there are 57% saying that they're seeing increases in things like overeating, smaller percentages in frustration and clinginess and anxiety, sadness and fear. However, seeing these increases in emotions, these emotions typically relate to depression. We couldn't ask specifically about depression because that's a medical diagnosis. However, we are seeing increases in a number of the factors determining whether someone is depressed or not. So you may also be seeing this with your peers, or you may be experiencing it yourself at the time that we are in lockdown or doing social distancing, or actually I prefer to say physical distancing. You will notice that you may be feeling some of these increases, or you may have peers, colleagues who are also experiencing these. And then as it relates to food shortages, and I believe a number of the issues that we would have seen from increases in those types of emotions would be related to the other two, the food shortages, and then later on I'll get to closure of schools. But COVID-19 has had an impact on the nutritional aspects of children. Approximately 44% of the households that we interviewed stated that they were experiencing some form of food shortage during the time of lockdown. And again, this is also concerning. We know that this is directly related to income. And we know also that 80% of our households have lost some sort of reduction in income. And so when you see that there is experiencing food shortages, this is now directly trickling down to children in the household. We're noticing that those children in rural areas, or in households with more than one child, or in households in the lowest socioeconomic bracket, are experiencing more of a loss, and that's expected. However, again, there's that concern because these were already what we would consider high-risk households in terms of if there's a shock to whatever system, that they would be affected greatly. And we're seeing that here. And I'm sure you can all relate to the issues that are going on with the closure of schools. So although the majority of children in the households that we interviewed were participating in some form of distance learning, and I want to be clear that distance learning specifically relates to not just online, but also in the form of packages that may have been prepared by schools or by the ministry for parents to collect, etc. But there's some form of learning or distance engagement. We're seeing, especially at the secondary level, that those who are not participating, or the majority of those that are not participating, is because there's an issue with their device, as in not having a device, or not having access to the internet. At the lower levels, we're seeing no facility being provided, or there's a lack of interest, and especially we're seeing that lack of interest also coming up a lot at the pre and basic school level. And we can understand that because, well, attention spans for that age group would be short. We know what our attention span is, so you can imagine what theirs would be. And as we also looked at the devices used, 34% of children do not have a device exclusive to them, which means that we may have a household that has devices. However, we're all sharing the device, whether the device is being shared amongst the children or the device itself is being used by the adults. And so in some instances, it's when the adult comes home from work that the child is now able to access whatever online material has been provided. And so that can be a source of frustration. It would also be linked to some of those increases in emotions that we would have seen, because this is a big change from what you would have been accustomed to, or we would have been accustomed to pre-March. Another aspect is if we were ever to return to face-to-face, and this was prior to, of course, the schools not doing face-to-face. However, what is interesting with this is that we had 15% of secondary school students, at least those at the secondary level, where the household stated no, they would not be sending the children back to school. And we also had a 21% maybe. This is a crucial stage. And so it means that the potential for disengagement at this level is relatively high. And 15% may not sound like a lot, but it is quite a bit. And then if you think about it, those that are in the maybe group can also at some point potentially turn to a no group, so they too would permanently be out of the system. So these are some of the things that we would want to consider. So the three implications as I close, we're seeing that there will be increases in mental health issues, and you may have already been seeing that. There is a worsening in the levels of food security. And of course, with the issues related to education, we expect that there may be some learning loss and regression. So those are the three main areas that I wanted to share with you today as you try to understand the situation, not just from a public health issue, or from a medical perspective, but from all sides of it. And so this part, including the public health. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Kellyanne Dixon Hamill. Really appreciate your presentation from the findings of your study. We're going to ask you to remain online and participate in the other presentations, and then afterwards, if we have questions, we will launch those questions for your kindly response. The issue really is understanding the problems, and I think this study has looked at it from a particular age cohort perspective. Ultimately, it's about where the solutions are, and that's where I'd like to spend some focus after the presentation. So at this time, I'm going to ask Dr. Judith Leiber, Director of Child and Adolescent Mental Health from the Ministry of Health and Wellness. Is she online? Okay, and the volumes are good? All right.
Can you hear me?
We're hearing you very well. So let's just go right into it. Give her a round of applause, please, just to encourage her. Dr. Leiber, go ahead, your 10-minute presentation. Thanks.
Thank you, Minister, and hello to all the youth leaders. I'm going to talk today about some coping strategies or dealing with COVID in terms of your mental health. I don't remember when we had the, I think we had a hurricane, and this person was saying they couldn't cross the river. So yes, we are going to cross the river no matter how hard COVID hits us. In terms of being a youth leader or a youth or wanting to help anybody else, you have to check your mental health first. Just like in the airplane where you're told to put on your oxygen mask before assisting others. So you need to make sure that your mental health, you're taking as good a care of your mental health as possible so that you can help other people. Okay, as Minister said, this pandemic was unexpected. I've been in the ministry for over 10 years. We have prepared for pandemics before. They never came. This one came and there was nothing we could do to prevent it from happening. And we are going through the throes of it. And it made us stop for a while and really think about things, and it changed our life. And we have to readjust to the new normal. This is a philosophy in psychiatry and psychology, that it's not the event that really determines whether something is stressful to you or not, but how you experience the event, how you see the event. And that is the basis for what we call reframing. And that is very important in terms of looking at COVID. How can we see the bright side of it? What advantages has it brought? How has it improved our lives in any way at all? That is what we need to look at in order to be as optimistic as possible. We've all had to use technology, and I know you as youngsters are very native to the use of technology. So that is not a problem. I want to also say that on the online, and I'm sure you guys have explored it, there are a lot of these things like the sideshow. I found this particularly helpful in terms of helping you with your mental health. This is actually a guy who's a psychologist, and he couldn't go to work, so he decided to do a set of these programs and put them on so that other people could benefit from it. I'd like to give you 7 R's in terms of your coping skills toolbox so that you can deal with the effects of this COVID pandemic. And I'll tell you that as I give more and more of these talks, the R's get more and more, but we're going to keep them at 7. Reflection, responsibility, relaxation, refueling and rest, recreation, relationships, and the need for resources. Reflection has to do with our feelings and the fact that we have to accept that we're going to have a range of emotions from day to day, from minute to minute, and don't be upset at this. Realize that the emotions will come and go, and that we just have to manage them and realize that they too will pass. And we are giving you some strategies to deal with some of the more disturbing emotions. Here is Carl Burnett. I don't know how many of you. Hello? Are you hearing me, Minister?
Yes, go ahead now. We lost you there for a bit.
I'm sorry about that. Yes, so we were talking about the feelings, reflecting on our feelings, and this is another part of reflection as well. All of us, I think, believe in a higher being, whatever that higher being is, and our communication with that higher being is an important part of dealing with this pandemic. Prayer, reflection, mindfulness, whatever you want to call it, is very important. Okay, the next stage is relaxation. What relaxes you? Reading a book for some people, painting, crossword puzzles, prayer, music, dance. That will also help you to deal with your mental health. So doing whatever makes you feel relaxed is very important. This is a strategy that I use and that has been trusted throughout the ages. Very, very effective relaxation, what we call the 4x4 box breathing. So 4 seconds, you inhale deeply. 4 seconds, you hold it. 4 seconds, you exhale. And 4 seconds, you do nothing. And you do this over and over when you feel the tensions rising, when you feel the anxiety rising. And believe me, it really works. And the more you practice it, the better, the more effective it gets. We have to take responsibility for how we're going to react. So we have to be positive. We have to be grateful for the good things around us and for the benefits that we still enjoy. And remember those of us, and we also have to take responsibility for keeping ourselves safe, also keeping our older folks safe. So although sometimes we feel like we're washing our hands and our hands may look like this, but we know that it is necessary in order to keep everyone safe. As I said before, the pandemic made us stop for a while, but now we have to go. And we've had to find a way to work smarter. This is a puppy who, instead of running down the stairs, actually is just sailing down. And that's what we've had to do. That's why we're having this Zoom meeting. That's why I can stay in my house and have a Zoom meeting, because we've had to find a way to work smarter and to become more innovative. Refueling and rest, very important. I know sometimes youngsters feel they don't need 8 hours of sleep. They only need 6 or 4, and they like to do an all-nighter, but we all need rest. Please remember that. Remember the dietary guidelines, healthy eating, very, very important. Try to cut down on the comfort foods and try to eat more healthy foods, please. Exercise is very important. Minister said it, 30 minutes a day will keep the doctor away. Very important. And recreation. I'd like you to remember this. Healthy recreation is doing something that makes you feel good and that is also good for you. Like exercise, or as we said, the other relaxing things, or a hobby. No, something that might make you feel good but is not good for you, maybe smoking or drinking. And I know that some people have turned to using more alcohol or smoking during this pandemic. And this is something that we have to discourage. I must say that NCDA has a helpline which can be called, it's 8-4, and you can get help if you feel that your substance abuse is really going off the charts. Minister spoke about distancing. And although we said social distancing, I like to say physical distancing, social connectedness. Relationships are very, very important to us as human beings. We're all looking for a friend and we want to keep all the friends that we had. And so we have to keep by phone or Zoom or FaceTime or Skype, whatever it means, or even writing them a letter. And I thought this was very funny. This may be the new normal. Any of you who are going to get married, this might be how you will have to take your first marital kiss. And just to remind you that we are talking about social connectedness, but physical distancing, and the social connectedness is very, very important for our mental health. Now, there are times when things just seem to be too much. And here's this guy saying, what more do you want from me? He just can't imagine it. COVID has just lasted so long. It has taken so much from us. What more can COVID take from us? So sometimes we feel at the end of our tether and we need to reach out to somebody, whether friends or family, or you may have to reach out to a professional. I told you about the NCDA helpline, but we have the mental health and suicide prevention helpline. If you feel the need to just speak to anybody, it's 24/7. It's 888 New Life or 888-639-5433. Because sometimes it's just too much. Also, the parenting commissions, for those of you who may be parents, have a slew of parenting support helplines that can help you and support you during this time. So what is the end game? COVID came and hit us off our bicycles, put us on our bottoms, but now we're trying to get back on our bicycles and finish the race. So let us all join together and work together, as Minister said, and finish the game as we wanted to from the beginning. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Leiber. And we're going to try and get those presentations and put them in the group so you can revise and go through. The actual actions and follow through, I think, could easily be guided by these concepts and presentations. So it's for us to just add our frame of reference and what we do and see how that can play out. But thanks a lot for that. The final presentation before our conversation or discussion is from Dr. Harrison, consultant pediatrician and adolescent medicine specialist. And Dr. Harrison hails from the University of the West Indies, and we're going to give her the floor. Let's hear it for her, please.
Minister Stacy, I'm short. Afternoon, everybody. No. Oh my gosh, that was very poor. Good afternoon, everybody. So guess what? I was very happy to just get a chance to stand up and walk. So yes, I am going to be that annoying person that just asks you to stand up one time, spin twice, and sit back down, please. I'll do the spin. I spin once, spin a second time. All right, we're all good. Thank you. Don't you feel a little better? No? Seriously? Then you need to get up a couple more times. Jeez, Okay, so thank you very much, Minister, for having me. And it is wonderful to see so many young people that are leaders. I now understand why the Minister is such a gifted speaker, because he has been speaking for many years, it would seem. Debating club, etc. So my role this afternoon is to share with you a little bit about your role and what you can do to help the country as we go through COVID-19. I am going to confess that some of the points I'm going to raise have been raised before, but we're going to press along. Okay, so who is a leader? I feel like I need to move my slides up here. 1 second. There we go. Perfect. Sorry, guys. So a leader is a person who influences or guides an individual, a group, or an organization. And many of you in here, I think everybody in here is from an organization. You therefore are an agent of change. So COVID-19, I feel if I'm tired of hearing about it, you probably are tired of hearing about it too. But guess what? We have to continue to hear about it because it's not stopping. Can you believe it was only in March that it started? Don't it feel long? It's only 7 months, but it feels like forever, honestly. And then in August, we started to see this little spike. And then now we have community spread, and Minister said it. Basically what that means is that anybody can have it. You can have it. I can have it. She can have it. Anybody can spread it. And the most concerning thing is that anybody can catch it. This virus does not care what you look like, how much money you have, where you live, what you do, does not care. That is the concept of community spread. So we gotta just embrace that concept because it's not gonna change. We know some of the common symptoms. We know fever is a big deal. We know coughing, we know running nose. But there's also the concept of diarrhea and vomiting. And when we have gastroenteritis season, which is usually about this time, people say, oh no man, it's just a regular gastro. But you don't know that, right? So don't ever assume it. Always get help about it. The difficult part of this particular virus is that most people, 80%, that is enough. 8 out of every 10 people who have it will have 0 symptoms. You know, when you have the flu, most people go and look sick, so you can say, yo, my brethren, stay far, don't bother come near me. But with this one, you don't know. So you can't tell the person, you look sickish, you stay far, because they don't. And many of our young people, and even some older persons who have been positive, it's after you tell them that their test comes back positive, you know, like they're going to travel and they want to get tested, or they have to have a procedure and they go and get tested, and then they come back positive and they say, blow, I really have it, you sure? No, man, you must have tested wrong. And I'm not making up these stories. I've heard these stories, right? Personally. And then they're like, wow, well, you know, maybe I could say I felt a little something 2 days ago. I felt a little more tired than usual. And that's all it is, okay? So the problem is that although those 8 out of 10 will have no symptoms, the other 2 will. And some of them will get really, really ill. But let's focus on you guys. So what have we noticed that young people are worrying about? This is a study out of Canada, but really in practice at the hospital, in private practice, this is the same thing that my young people are saying. They're worried about their family members getting ill, their family members dying, themselves getting ill. They're worried about their education. They're worried about just being able to relax and chill, doing their typical social activities. You guys are all socially conscious people because you're leaders, and you haven't probably been able to do much of what you normally do, correct? And you almost feel lost. And there's this sense that, you know, some of us as older adults feel like, well, I don't know why the young people are going on like this, because they have it all together. What do they have to worry about? I cannot stand when older people say, what do young people have to worry about? Them don't have no stress. Them don't have nothing upon them head. What am I worried about? That could not be further from the truth. Is that right? Okay. So I am frequently reminding parents, I said, please don't tell your young people that. Do not tell your teenagers that. Because, and you know the other phrase I like to do, when I was their age, I never have nothing on my head. Yeah, but that was 30 years ago. What does that have to do with anything in 2020? Like nothing. So don't make those flippant comments as a parent, right? Young people are also worried about their financial lives, the economic impact. Many of my young people who were getting ready to go out and get a job after finishing their degree are like, okay, so the job that I had lined up, it just went into thin air, no longer there. And then the biggest question, I think, is how long is this blooming thing going to last? Like, when will it be over? Could it be over yesterday? Well, we don't know. We don't have the answer. We can only try and get it to end as quickly as possible, but we have no answers, and that is the most frustrating thing. School challenges. So, well, we know those. Limited connectivity, limited access, limited resources. I had a mommy say to me, boy, doc, one child in PEP class and the other one in second form. But guess what, now, doc? PEP little more important than second form right now. So my 11-year-old is going to get to use my phone and not my 14-year-old. I have to make a choice. That's not fair, but it's understandable. She has to do what she has to do, right? There's anxiety about going back to school, whether it be in person or it's online. There's anxiety for some people, for everybody to see what they look like, what the back of them house look like, who is making noise in the background. Young people worry about those things, right? And it may not seem important to you, per se, but there's always somebody it's going to be important to. So we have to keep it in the back of our mind. There's Zoom fatigue. I know I'm tired of virtual meetings because I'm a relative social person. I like to hang out and I like to chat and I love to sit, you know, hail you and sit down and learn a little bit about you and that sort of thing. And then when you're virtual, it's like I can't lean over and lick you on your arm and say, you all right? Can't do that. And that's what young people thrive on. They think they prefer to text online and be on the phone, but know that they don't have that ability to choose between the phone and being in connectivity physically. They're realizing it. And then there are young people who have special needs. So my young people who have things like ADHD, or they may be autistic, learning virtually is like murder. It's rough. I mean, it's hard to pay attention when you're in a class, much less when you're at home and the dog bark, or the lady down the street calling you to come help or move something. It's rough, very rough. And then those people who are struggling with school, they can't access extra lessons quite as easily, because a lot of extra lessons teachers are retired people, so they have NCDs or they're in the high-risk group. So instead of being able to have 10 or 15 young people in a class, they can maybe have 3 so that they can distance, right? So the other 8 or 10 get bounced. Miss special events, big deal. People who are going into first form, it's your first year in high school, you don't get to experience it. Your first year in sixth form, you don't get to experience it. You work hard to get into university, you don't get to experience it. You're hoping to get chosen by a scout. There may be no champs this year. That's traumatic. I mean, it's traumatic for me who like to watch it, but for people who are using that as a possibility and a potential to go away, that is dread, because you can't get there any other way. Social events. Your birthday, well, okay, my birthday was in March and COVID screwed that up. My birthday is coming up and it looked like it's gonna be knocked again, right? Then from my perspective, I'm concerned about continuity of healthcare. A lot of people don't want to go to the hospital or to the health center for their regular checkup. So a lot of illnesses are kind of getting out of control. They're not going for their regular mental health support. So they were seeing their therapist, but now the therapist is seeing them online and they just don't feel like they want to do that. It's just not the same. Sometimes they do, and that's great, but it's not always. And then those special needs young people who need occupational therapy or speech therapy, it's really hard to do that from a distance, okay? So what are we seeing as providers? Dr. Leiba alluded to it, Dr. Hamill did also. So we're seeing more depression, more anxiety, and not in a little way, you know, guys. I don't want to make you feel like it's just 1 and 2 young people feeling this way. It's enough of them having this struggle. Some engaging in self-harm behaviors, some getting disordered eating behaviors, some making really bad choices. And then, you know, there's always a persistent stigma around mental health, so you don't necessarily tell anybody, and nobody's gonna ask you because they don't want you to offload on them. And then there's COVID, and have you all noticed the stigma that's associated with COVID? If any of you in here have had a family member that's positive, when you go to work, even though you're not positive, you know, and the 2 weeks of your quarantine don't ain't gonna work, it's like everybody walk like this. Far. Because, you know, it's like, although you have gotten past this, they're still afraid of you. So what might you see? What should you be looking out for as a leader? Because you have to identify and then change. Young people may look sad, they may be withdrawn. Sometimes, especially in Jamaica, because, you know, we're relatively aggressive people, instead of looking sad, we might be irritable, easily annoyed. We just, every little thing just annoy you. And you say, but hold on, that's not typical for Catherine. She don't normally behave so. Disturbance in sleep. Can't sleep, sleep too much, all those kind of things. And then physical complaints as well. Tummy ache, headache, muscle ache. We've seen more young people use poor coping strategies. Dr. Leiba went through the good ones. And unfortunately, sometimes parents don't know what's going on, or they don't know how to get the right help. So these are some of the coping strategies that if you see people using it, you want to redirect them. If they're blaming themselves about things that go wrong, if they're disengaged, you know, so you're in fifth form and you say, well, can't bother. This COVID thing just screw up everything, but can't bother. So they just lock off, tune out. You know, when you see that proverbial click and it switch off, that's what some people do. Substance use, and then denial. This COVID thing is not really real. It's all over. Better coping, acceptance, positive reframing, planning. Have a plan for your day, a plan for your week. Distracting yourself with stuff. Music, good music, art, exercise, whatever it may be. Using humor, bust two joke. I find young men, and I have to just big up the number of young men that are sit up into the room. It is very unusual at a health fraternity to see so many young men, and I am thrilled. It is good to see you all. And I find that young men use that humor much more than girls, and I wish we as women would use it more. And that is why it's always good to not just have friends who are girls. If you're a girl, you must have some guys too, because you know, them can just bring it down a notch and just chill, and everybody can be good. And then you must vent. You must have a good friend that you can just sit down and say, oh man, I've had enough of this. And just be able to vent, get it off them, don't take it too serious, and move on. So what can you do? You are being called to be role models. You may be positive and not know. Everybody can spread, but you guys are the ones that will spread the most if you get positive, because people are going to look at you and say, yeah, man, you look healthy. You know, like the same foolishness we do with HIV. You can't have HIV. Look how you look nice. Hello? Anybody can have HIV. So cover it up every time. And you need to set the example that if the doctor says to you or the nurse says to you, you need to get COVID tested, don't be silly and say, I'm not getting tested. I don't want to know if I have it. Don't do that. Fear does not change the outcome, okay? Whether you're positive or not is not dependent on when you get tested. The only way you will know and know how to manage it is if you get tested. So yeah, it might be a little uncomfortable. Minister, I'm sure you've had a couple. I've had to. It's not fun, but you do it because you have to, right? So my call to you would be to be respectful. Respect yourself. Respect the people in your family, and respect the people around you. Social distance, physical distance. Essentially, that means if you and your person beside you stretch out your hand, you shouldn't touch. That's 6 feet, because your arm is about 3, right? Wear your mask properly. So no, it can't be here, it can't be here, and you can't touch it all the time to shift it. If you need to shift it at the side. If you need to take it off, you hold the strings. Wash your hands, sanitize, stay home if you're sick. Don't feel bad to stay home, and quarantine if you need to, and then to reduce stigma. And that is just to be able to treat people respectfully. That's what stigma is all about in terms of reduction. I want to leave you with a quote that I think anybody who wants to be a leader should embrace. And this is about almost a 3,000-year-old quote, right? A Chinese philosopher, Lao Tzu. And he says, a leader is best when people barely know he or she exists. When his work is done, his aim fulfilled, they will say, we did it ourselves. So I call on you to go out and be the change, and I hope you are empowered to empower. Thank you.
Okay. All right, so let me just thank Dr. Harrison, and before her, Dr. Kellyanne Dixon Hamill and Dr. Judith Leiber for those 3 presentations. I think combined they represent an excellent explanation of where we are in this COVID fight, the impact on each of us as a person, as an individual. I think it was important for us to discern, as was outlined in the presentation, the need for us to self-manage and to deal with the coping mechanism first and foremost in our own interest for ourselves, even as we empower ourselves to go and help others. And I think that was very much highlighted in the presentations. How do you cope? Those very same principles that you would have employed to protect yourself would then become now your teaching material to help others to do the same. And in a sense, that's really what we're about. So thanks again for the presentations. And I am assuming that they're all listening. The other 2 doctors are online, and Dr. Harrison is here. So we're going to open the floor now for some comments or questions, and that includes persons online. So I'm going to ask the technical people to instead of my being on the screen, maybe we should put the screen of the onliners. I am told that we have some 77 entities being represented online, and we have about 20 entities being represented in the audience. So I want to give all of you a round of applause. Thank you very much. So which means we have We have 97, close to 100 entities represented by young leaders across the country, and that we appreciate a lot. All right, so the floor is open, and for those online, just indicate by raising the hand button on your system. Is anyone monitoring that from my side? Oh, okay, someone is monitoring, so you may have to just indicate if you have anyone there, and I'll allow them to speak. And of course, you use the mute and unmute knob. When you're not speaking, keep on the mute, please, because otherwise we get feedback. All right, maybe we should take the first question or two in the audience. Anyone? Comments, questions? Yes, just again, introduce yourself or your entity, and then go ahead.
Hi, good afternoon again, everyone. I'm Everton Ratcher, President of the Jamaica Union of Tertiary Students. Now, Minister, let me first commend the presentations. They were quite detailed in terms of showing some of the areas that we struggle with. But the concerns that I would like to raise, one, what intention or plans does the ministry putting in place to deal with the psychosocial support services that children and parents need, in particular at this time when we have to be doing remote learning? That is the first question. The second thing I'd also like to know is what mechanisms are there that the ministry will be putting in place, or stronger mechanisms to deal with the issue of child abuse? When you look at the report in 2019, there was over, in February of 2020 rather, there was over 1,163 cases of reported child abuse. In March, there was 842 reports. But not only that, in 2019, there was over 20,000 cases of child abuse being reported. What strong mechanisms does the ministry plan to put in place to deal with the issue of child abuse, especially during this time of remote learning? And the final thing, Minister, I'd just like to take this opportunity. I would have spoken with you before, just to invite you to the Juts Town Hall. It's going to be a platform where we invite all the tertiary institutions to sit and to discuss the issues surrounding COVID-19 and how we move forward. It'll be a very good platform for you to utilize to share with students.
All right, so you send me the invite or remind me on that. If I can do that remotely, I will. Otherwise, I'll nominate someone to. All right, so you're asking me personally questions now, not the experts. And the second question about child abuse, obviously there is a mechanism to deal with child abuse in the country. And I don't have the helpline now, but that's something we could circulate within this group, and we could speak to them, the Ministry of Education and also Ministry of Health as a combined ministry that deals with both public health and deal with that age cohort to try and support greater responsiveness to that issue. But it ties in with to some extent with the presentation that was made, the first presentation on coping mechanisms from home. The Ministry of Education and the Ministry of Health have actually been working together, and we have put in place an approach that would see as part of the teaching experience, remote teaching experience, that is, techniques for dealing with the loneliness and the challenges at home, including the challenges that you have to engage to deal with the family, including mothers or parents who are at home having to do a lot of the oversight, if you will, for the kids who are not going out and not being able to interface directly with their teachers and their friends. I cannot tell you it's an ideal scenario because it's very, very difficult, and the government continues to assess and review, and the absolute ideal is to have the children in the classroom. We do have protocols that have been established for face-to-face, but the decision was taken not to resume full-fledged face-to-face until there was somewhat of a better control on the pandemic in terms of the rate of spread and what was happening at this time with the community transmission. But, you know, as soon as the government is advised and can put additional mechanisms in place, the face-to-face is really the ideal scenario. It's really not a perfect system, or should I say, it is a system with many weaknesses to do the online classes. I have seen it myself. I have a 15-year-old So I know what it is, what it means. So it's not the type of answer that probably you're going to get some specifics on, except to say that the Ministry of Education and the Ministry of Health are monitoring, are intervening. Like 2 days ago, I met with all the principals in my constituency, for example, and went through all the issues that they had, making suggestions around technology and access to technology. And as the Ministry of Education officer was there, the issues of coping mechanism for kids at home as part of the teaching experience was developed, was discussed. And those are the methods that we are engaging now to try to deal with those situations. But as it relates to you, it would be good if, as part of your own mandate in your community, through your service clubs or your societies or your organizations, you develop, and we could get the ministry involved, a manual of some kind to circulate to this group around how you probably could help younger populations in your communities as part of that coping mechanism. And that's something that I'd like to put on the table as for a conversation to continue, guided by, of course, public health, but also by education. In the past, I know persons like yourselves would give extra classes, for example, spend an hour with a child or 2 kids in an area and help them to read and to look at the homework and things of that sort. I think it's something that we probably need to do more of at this point in time. I think there's a lot of value in it because the children are more now on their own and unattended than before. And sometimes we would do this in the summer months because they are not at school. Well, not at school is now the norm. So to the extent that we can help is a very positive thing for the child, both from a psychological, psychosocial perspective, as well as from the academic experience perspective. So I'd like to make that an agenda item as we continue the dialogue beyond this. All right, one more from the room, and then we go to the screen.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm David Salmon, the Surrey County Coordinator from the National Youth Parliament, and I have 2 questions, Minister.
Mm-hmm.
Firstly, St. Vincent, Guadeloupe, Martinique, French Guiana, Barbados, Grenada, St. Lucia have all reported increase in dengue cases over the previous few months. Firstly, I'd like to ask is what is the ministry doing to address if there is a potential outbreak in Jamaica? Secondly, could the ministry also consider reporting a number of dengue cases that have taken place? Because I can tell you from my perspective, I know persons who have contacted the virus. That's one specific question. The next question is that the Ministry of Health is doing a very commendable job in assisting students with mental health. But the second question I would like to ask is, has there been any studies that are taking place for the long-term mental health of students? And if so, is the Ministry of Health consulting or considering more concrete steps to address the remedial program, for example, increasing the number of guidance counselors, for instance, or training more counselors along the way?
Okay. So in terms of dengue, it is a growing concern because this is a season for mosquito breeding sites to be out there, and so the dengue message is a big message for us, and we're pushing it. We have not had any unusually high cases for this time of year, and I track the numbers on a weekly basis. So I think so far we're doing well. The AD's index is relatively low, still above the 5%, that is the acceptable percentage, but somewhere in the 10 to 15%. And then the vector control team are out in the field doing their work, and that will continue because we don't want to have a dengue outbreak with COVID. That would be a double whammy for us. Plus the flu season, by the way, which would be a triple whammy. So that is ongoing. The issue of mental health and the response to mental health, it was a second question?
The long-term response to mental health. Is the ministry, for example, considering...
We have a significant mental health initiative coming out of a task force report by Dr. Earl Wright, the Mental Health and Homelessness Task Force report. It's on our website. I'd invite you to look at it. And it charts an entire course for the changes that should take place in mental health, the approaches that would look to less institutionalization, more community-based support, more mental health aides being recruited, more logistic support in terms of vehicles, more collaboration with NGOs. I don't want to dwell too much on it now because I really want to focus on the matter at hand, but there is a substantial roadmap, if you will, which we have started to implement. But on the matter of mental health and this core group, just to pull us back into to where we are, I am hoping that the volunteerism that will characterize this group will see persons like yourselves with some level of guidance from us engaging in your communities and giving support to persons who have mental health issues. And mental health must be interpreted not in the traditional way. You know, we tend to see mental health as a like we call it a madman or a mad person. That's a stigma, right? Who is abandoned and left in the streets and not doing anything. Left no home, nothing like, nowhere to go. But mental health affects all of society, from the street cleaner to the CEO, and including students and all age cohorts. And it's something that we have to take a lot more seriously in our society. And it means anxiety, to depression, to schizophrenia, to many, there are quite a number of mental health related issues. And what we want a group like this to do is to help to just get persons to deal with the coping mechanisms of COVID in the first instance. It's about talking to people, outreach, giving basic support. And if persons are really having a hard time, then they are referred to the system. And every parish has a mental health team. We have mental health aides, we have mental health nurses, and so that outreach can take place. And we do have a toll-free line that can be used to advance or to report significant mental health issues. So that's something that I'd like to put as agenda number 2 as we seek to advance your own involvement as young leaders in the society. All right, is there a question online? Any hands up? I see one from the screen. You sure you're not seeing it? You could recognize it or no? All right, let me take one more from the audience then while you do that. Yes, Miss in the red masks. Turn on your mic for me.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Aaron Roxburgh, and I'm the PRO for the National Youth Parliament of Jamaica for the County of Middlesex. My question is, what measures are being taken to help differently abled students access online learning with the recent reopening of schools?
Well, the government has been announcing a series of measures around online in collaboration with the technology companies to ensure that we boost access through the technology. I don't have all the details of all of that. That's a lot of the Ministry of Education, but it is being announced, and there's support that is being given across the country, including not just online, but using mainstream media, the television stations, to provide the teaching. And as I've said, it is a challenge. The government, the Prime Minister up to recently said that he would have to we'll be looking at how quickly we can get back to face-to-face, because the face-to-face issue is the most effective approach. But the government has a program that has dealt with that. I want you to focus some of the questions on the presentations too. All right, so let me see who has a question based on that on the presentation that we're asked. Yes, miss, over there. Turn on your mic for me, please. Okay, maybe you can go to the next one. Oh yeah, it works now.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Sophie. I represent the Integrity Action Movement as well as my church group. And my question to Dr. Dixon Hamill is that during your presentation, I was really hoping that you'd provide us with some solutions based on your research, but I guess based on the time that was not provided. Do you have any recommendations for your findings?
Is Dr. Dixon Hamill online?
I'm still here.
Okay, go ahead. The young people want recommendations beyond the challenges.
Yes, and I understand that. Those are also very important. So it is important that we look at securing financial support for families. Because as you understand, especially as you start to affect the food supply, you know that families are really hurting from an economic perspective. So there needs to be some sort of mechanism put in place to support the most needy families. Also, as it relates to access from the perspective of education, it's important, especially to get tablets in the hands of children. There's also the need for universal internet access. But even also related to that is the concern coming from some parents that they do not have flexible work arrangements to allow them to stay home and assist the children. So outside of the data collection, because we actually got data from specific key personnel interviews, and what some of those interviews stated, and Dr. Harrison also alluded to this in her presentation, is that a number of parents are not able to, one, supervise their children, and two, there is the inability of some of them to assist, because yes, school is online, but sometimes you do need that one-on-one interaction that teachers will give, and parents can't always fill that gap.
Okay.
So those are a few of the measures we
I take all the points, and I particularly like the idea of the collaboration on flexible work hours, and it's something I think we need to push at the level of policy and encourage entities, companies to do that. It is a difficult task for you to be working while having kids at home, supervising them. You're not trained to do so. It's a specialist task, so it can be quite challenging. I mean, any way you take it, it's going to be challenging. And this is why I come back to us here. To the extent that you can say my entity that is located in Foga Road in Clarendon is going to take on the challenge of helping this basic school in this community. And it's 6 of us, and we're going to commit 1 hour a week, and we're going to touch base with the principal or the teacher, and we're going to take them in groups of 3 or 4, and we're going to go through a little half-an-hour session with them. Believe me when I tell you, it's called a community COVID conversation. It is going to be valuable. You are going to help that child in more ways than one. And I want you to focus on that and define some sort of a role to assist in that regard, because you'd be surprised how therapeutic it is that that child knows that you are sitting down with them under the ackee tree, the mango tree on the veranda, somewhere in an open space, and just talking to them and just reading to them. Guys, we don't need to overcomplicate the response that we're looking at. We don't need to be overly scientific in terms of the articulation of what we are going to do. It is very basic, it is very simple, but it is very effective. Don't pitch too high, because you don't need to. It really is, how do we help people in their normal surroundings? That's really what it is. How you help people in their normal surroundings. And one of the things that I'm going to ask for when we start to converse and discuss the issues further as to where we go from here is to say to you, how many of the 97 organizations in this room and online are going to target schools in your communities to give 1 hour every 2 days or 3 days or per week and collaborate to just help someone at that level? Even if it's just to read the book with them and just ask them a few questions. You'll be surprised how it will be good for them, good for the parent, good for the community. Or go visit 2 or 3 senior citizens and just have a conversation with them. And we go in, 2 of us will go and we sit down and we just, it helps. And that's exactly what is coming out, and what we need to do is just pull the conversations to a level that is simple, basic, but effective. All right, I will go now to the back of the room, and then I'll come over to you. Yes, sir, to the extreme back, and then I'll come back to the front.
All right, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Javon Gordon, representing the UEMONA Guild, the UESTAT, and JMVY. And my question is geared towards the first presentation, which speaks about the economic concern of youth. I'm asking, what are some of the measures your ministry or the government by large is doing for job security, foster entrepreneurship, and even the slightest skills training? And if you are, what is the promise that it will be effective and it will be carried out to fruition?
So you're asking me a question in a way that I'm going to have to give you a budget presentation, right? It's like asking me how am I going to solve the problems of the world? And I want to pull you back again to where we are around COVID and dealing with the coping mechanisms of COVID. The government has consistently spoken of several issues and initiatives around education, student loan, access, expanding heart, building out particular sectors of the economy and so on. And I can get into all of that. And as young leaders, I think it's important, and I commend you for maintaining that interest in all of those issues. But what I want you to do is to help me to help them, whoever them is right now, right? Apart from your coping mechanisms, I want you as young people to help me to help the rest of the community who needs the help and to provide the leadership for that help. And what I'm saying is what I want to hear from you are the suggestions that you may have or queries around suggestions based on the presentations that's going to help you to help those that we're seeking to help. Beyond that, I think you'll be a better person. And believe me when I tell you, you'll find a space economically or otherwise, because you're on your way to that, finding that space anyway, being in this room and representing the leadership that you have. Let me hear, you're gonna talk to me about COVID and coping. All right, go ahead. Oh, you're the young barrister, right?
Yes,
from Norman Manley.
Keeping it around COVID.
Okay.
Livingston Doheny, Norman Manley Law School. I know we have been helping, most of us in our communities, people who would have been not able to go out, like the elderly and children, etc., to cope with the COVID restrictions, etc. But several times I've come across people not feeling well and would like their symptoms to be addressed. They want to find out if they have COVID. They want to talk to an expert, not so much me. They'll tell you you're in law school, you're not a doctor. So,
right.
So I'm wondering if there is any, in the near future, any at all, just as though we are having online school, if we can have an app where, probably you pull it up and there'll be a doctor there to just talk them through it. Okay, how are you feeling, etc.
Right. That's a good question. So we do have that mechanism, and what we'll do is depend on you to help to push it more. There's a 888 One Love number, which is manned by a number of persons. Sometimes you may have a little difficulty, but if you keep at it, you get through. And on the other line of that 888 One Love number is an expert, normally clinically trained, who you can discuss symptoms with and get a response. Beyond that, you can contact your health center. There's a health center, 325 of them across the country, and they will give information if you have issues, and you can get through to them. Beyond that, you can call the hospital. Beyond that, yes, you can go online and visit the ministry's website with a series of information. For testing, testing is done normally when the doctor thinks you need a test, and that's normally based on symptoms or on contact tracing when they think you have been close to someone who is positive. In another few weeks, we are hoping to introduce another set of tests and involving more the private sector where someone could actually pay for a test. So you'll have tests on demand. Right now, it's not that as straightforward as that. So the point is, you can in fact call the 888 One Love number. You can reach out to your health center or your hospital. You can go on the Ministry of Health website. And guess what? Hopefully, with you as part of this army of information sources, we are going to provide you with some information so that you can answer some of those questions too. So you now become part of that information source, which we'd like to circulate and give you after we have completed this exercise. Yes, Ms.
Thank you, Minister. Christina Williams. So I have suggestions, and I know you'd really like those. So the first one is, coming from today, I think we need to create youth focal areas, or youth focal points as we tend to call them. So for example, you have a group of 10 young people from this very room, and you say, okay, these 10 young people will be working with Portland or St. Thomas, etc. And then you may say, okay, you'll be working with the Ministry of Health, the Ministry of Education, and then you'll feed students or whatever concerns that you have to work with these different focal areas. It's great to say that we should take on the charge, but we need to also be facilitated through the very formal mechanism. So that's one idea that I'm suggesting here today. The second one is that, and I have not really heard anyone speak about it, I saw that Dr. Harrison, you went to it, but you didn't go into it directly. It's about sexual and reproductive health. We have been talking a lot about mental health, which is great, but we tend to shy away from the sex, which still continues even though we have COVID-19. So right now we're talking about young people not having access to contraception, young people going to the clinic, and because they don't have COVID or some respiratory illness, they're not being looked at. I think we need to still ensure that young people are being protected in those areas, because when we look at Ebola, we saw that there are a lot of our 75% increase in unintended pregnancies. And as we should know, that the younger that you are, if you become pregnant, it's more likely for you to actually have maternal complications. Or you're seeing that in the hospital with people dying when they go to have their babies. So I am saying that we need to protect our girls as they're home, possibly being sexually abused, and even as young people in here who are having sex, by consent, we need to ensure that there's still support in terms of contraception and maternal support. That's two. How I suggest helping that, because it's our suggestions for me, is that we currently have the teen hub at the transport center. It's still there, still functional. I think we still need to ensure that we are routing services through the teen hub, because that is actually the youth-friendly service that we have through the Ministry of Health for young people. So I think we need to ensure that that service is still up and running, and that it's catering to the young people that we need to support. Thank you, Minister.
Thank you very much. I think those are excellent suggestions. We're going to make a note of those. I like the idea of the enabling, and this is what we're trying to do starting here, but it needs to be drilled down further at the level of the parish and the community, and I think that is a very worthwhile suggestion. So I'm going to ask the team to collect your name and get some more details on some of those suggestions, and we'll work on it. I'm going to ask Doc here, though, on the sexual and reproductive health, if she wants to just chime in and give a quick response.
Yes.
Not that we're shying away from it, it probably just wasn't a focus today, but certainly it's critical both from the consented sexual activity as well as from the abusive sexual activity. I know we are very familiar with the teen hub, but for those of you who may not know, it's in the Harvard Tree Transport Center, and it really is a teen-friendly space where you can go get services inclusive of sexual and reproductive health services and mental health support. And the plan is, under Minister's agreement as well, to have more of those teen hubs across the island.
Yes.
So we look forward to that. But I would also suggest, Minister, that if young people are going to clinics and are not being able to access, then hopefully they can call in or write into the Ministry of Health, or maybe they can put it on.
Absolutely. No, I want, yes. I'm challenging all of you to tag me. What is my Twitter thing again? I don't remember. I forgot to look. Christofton. My Twitter handle is Christofton, right? All right. Well, you can look at it, look it up. Anyway, no, but I want to endorse what Doc just said a while ago. The teen hubs are important, and we are planning to establish more. And yes, it's sexual and reproductive health is important, and there are consequences of confinement. And it's mental, it's physical, it's psycho, so it's wide, which is why the whole approach. But you know, I don't want to have you too much all over the place. I want to try and focus, and then we can build out from there to get it better. Yes, sir, you had your hand up for a while. Is there anyone online with a hand up? One person, we'll come to that person online right after this gentleman.
All right, thank you, Minister. The name is Odane Horton, Jamaica Youth Ambassador. It's a suggestion in the form of a question. So we definitely do need youth leaders and youth clubs being a part of the community and assisting in helping students getting back to school on the educational curricula. But several of the speakers highlighted it is a challenging time economically, and it does filter down to us as youth leaders as well. My question is the government of Jamaica prepared to incentivize youth leaders assisting in the community level? There are programs such as JAMVAT that youth leaders have to do hours and all of those things so that they can get a scholarship to go back to school. Can something similar be put in place so that, because we're looking at the sustainability of it, and if you have youth leaders say they're coming together, they're going to help young people in the community. They'll do it once a day, twice, thrice, and then after that, it will become daunting. So how can we encourage the young people in these communities to continue the program? So whether incentivize it through some mechanism like JAMVAT or some other program.
All right, so what I'll say to that is multifold. And I appreciate the comment and the concern. First of all, there are many mechanisms within the society that empowers, strengthens, and creates opportunities for people, and young people in this case. It is where those opportunities can be incentivized in a financial way. I would certainly want to encourage it because I fully appreciate the realities of the society and of young people who are who are making an effort and may not have the means to do so. I'm the beneficiary of 3 scholarships for 3 degrees. Otherwise, I probably couldn't afford some of them. And so I understand the value there. And we can look to see how that could be done. But I want to, without the fear of being misinterpreted, I don't want to be, I want to also emphasize the need for leadership that is characterized by some level of voluntarism and some demonstration of commitment and even sacrifice. You're all leaders in your own right, and I know you don't do what you do because you're getting paid to do it. I know you do it because you enjoy doing it, you have the spirit, the commitment to do it, and that you have worked many times without any recognition. That's really a good definition of a leader who serve in a way that is, service above self, if you will. It doesn't take away from the need to incentivize money financially, but I think that's an important component. Secondly, I think the work of experience, the value of experience and exposure in these events also builds character, and it builds, frankly speaking, your resume when you apply for these scholarships that are out there, whether through government or otherwise. And I would certainly encourage you to recognize that that is an important play also that should be recognized and indeed supported as part of your learning experience. So we can look at the incentivization. It doesn't have to be financial. It could be just recognition for what you do. I think there is value in that recognition, which is why I say we should brand you and put you out there so you have a title and a name and some legitimacy and authority to go in and to assist. And that's something that I'm discussing with the team to find a way to get that done. And we take the point on board very strongly, and we will try to do something about it. I want to say too that the ideas that you're bringing up, I want to ask you kindly, when we put together a little group where we can communicate, to upload your ideas so that we can all examine them and pull out what we think are worthy of pursuit in the early stages, what we may have to build on. Because I think the best ideas are coming from you, not from me. And I'd like to be able to use your minds and your capacities to advance the COVID response. The person online, can you allow them to speak now?
Hello, good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
Yes, my name is Terry Wright. I am the Associate Public Relations Officer for the United Student Movement of Northern Caribbean University. My area of concern really is to find out what exactly the ministry is currently doing in order to actively curtail the stigma that is placed on persons who have or is suspected to have contracted the virus. Furthermore, are there any strategies in place to sensitize frontline workers as well as other workers within the health sector as it relates to caring for patients with the virus without administering stigma? Lastly, as it relates, what is being done to ensure that the mental health of these workers are being adequately catered for? Because I'm pretty sure that these persons who are on the front line must be suffering from some form of challenges where mental health is concerned. Now, my question for Dr. Hamilton, what is your solution to the problem of nutrition? I noticed that emphasis was placed on the lack of food, but there is also the issue of too much food, which can lead to non-communicable diseases. And there's the concern of children not getting enough exercise, seeing that they cannot go out and play as they would normally do. So what is your solution where that is concerned? Thank you for the time.
Thank you, and thank you for being online and for communicating all the way from Mandeville, I'm assuming, Northern Caribbean. The two quick ones on the two responses to the questions you asked. Stigma. Well, starting with what we have here, I hope you interpret this congregation and this discussion as part of breaking down stigma, because we have given you enough information to let everyone know, hopefully, that COVID-19 is no respecter of persons. Uptown, downtown, and midtown is what I tend to say. COVID is present, clear and present, right beside you, right above you, right below you, everywhere. That's what community transmission is about. So stigmatizing you do at your expense, at your cost, at your risk, because there's no foolproof system to secure yourself against COVID except what you do. And so we have to show appreciation and understanding to those who have it. I think Doc had spoken to that very clearly earlier on when she likened it to HIV, and that persons shouldn't feel like because you look healthy, it doesn't mean you're not contaminated. So we're doing that. But beyond that, their stigma issue is an issue that is real, and we have pushed that message through mainstream media, through community visits. You know, I have been to every quarantine community. I have been to every or quite a few of the clusters that even without quarantining. I have been in the marketplace, the town squares, I've been in every parish pushing the COVID line, on the street, expose myself to everybody, taxi driver, vendors, everybody. And I do that recognizing the risk it may pose, even in this period of community transmission, but also thinking that it's necessary for us to ensure that everybody appreciates what the message is and that all of us have to play a role. And as the Minister of Health, I have perhaps more than most a key role to play. So we are doing that, but we have to continue. But you, in this context, can play a big role around stigma. Because you, first of all, have to accept that because you may not be as affected, you cannot be infected. Because most young people are the ones who are being infected more than most. You have to accept that your mothers and grandmothers can have it. And so, to me, this is a great effort at destigmatizing. The mental health issue I've gone through, for workers on the front line, we have a welfare program. In fact, before this meeting, we had a meeting of all the unions and staff associations right in this room this morning, where we went through this welfare program that we have launched for frontline workers, where we are providing for them in many areas, psychosocial support, wellness, relaxation, many of the R's that Dr. Leiber had on this screen. We have developed specific programs to support them across the country because they are stressed, they are burnt out, they've been at this for a while and they need those supports. So there is a targeted program for them, sir. I don't know, the third question, was it for you or? Dr. Hamel, you heard that last question?
Yes, I heard the last question.
Okay, you want to quickly respond?
Yes, sure. And it is that, especially the issue about exercise is very important too, because from the study, I didn't mention it then, but from the study, we found that approximately 39% of children were not getting any exercise during this period at all. And that's an issue. So as it relates to overall health, from a physical perspective, you had spoken to the nutritional aspect and also exercise. Part of it is going to come from, well, we knew the nutritional aspect is going to come from both that social support mechanism and also from a perspective of education. What constitutes a balanced meal, for example? How can you manage a balanced meal on, let's say, these different types of budgets? These are examples that could be used. And as it relates to exercise, again, public education, I know that MOHW had a program on, I don't know if it's still on, I think it was TBJ, where it was a certain number of minutes where children were to get up and exercise. It was a program specifically for them. So that's one way, but there are others. In terms of education and getting children to do that sort of exercise, and getting also parents to realize that that is needed. Specifically as to what types of social mechanisms can be put in place to assist with children getting the proper mechanisms, right now I'm unable to say. But as we are, hopefully we can determine some sort of feasible solution.
Okay, thank you very much for that response. We know we should have closed at 3. I'm going to go on for 10 more minutes, no more, and then there's some refreshments upstairs for those who would like to partake. And Dr. Harrison may have to step out, so if she leaves before we close, I want to just officially again thank her for her participation and really say to her we're going to lean on her for some of that advice. We'd like that presentation because we want to conceptualize and develop a program that can get the young group involved in this approach. So any suggestions we'd really appreciate. But thank you very much again for being here. Give her a round of applause, please. All right, so I mean we have 9 minutes. I just used up 1. So you have to keep your questions tight and we move right into it. Yes, sir.
Good day, everyone. Nathaniel Amore from the Norman Manley Law School. So one of the major elephants in the room right now, as it relates to mental health, is school administrations and how they are dealing with students in a time like this. Mental health is extremely important, and I would want to know what the Ministry of Health is doing to advise these institutions and how they should deal with students, how they should disseminate information, just having programs in these institutions that can assist students in a time like this. It is a question, but it is a recommendation if there's nothing there currently. The recommendation is that they have experts advise these schools. People who are experts in mental health go to these institutions and basically tell them, you know, you can't deal with students a certain way. You understand? So that's my question.
All right, well, that question came up before, but I'll answer after. Let me get the other questions. The gentleman at the back with the camera.
Good afternoon, everyone. My question, sir, does deal with mental health also, but it is tied in. Now, as of recent, a lot of people haven't been able to, you know, bury their dead as they would want to. And then going into December, there's this whole Christmas family season. Now, are you going to provide somewhat of a training as to how we can best approach the people in our communities or people that we're going to interact with? Because it's really difficult. As you said, break in a chain of something that's commonly done can cause some emotional or psychological disorder. So is there anything that you can suggest or a training you can provide for us?
Okay, and the next person, and then I'm going to go on that side. Yes, miss. Turn on your mic for me, please. Yeah, it's not now.
Okay. Greetings again, youth leaders. I am Yannick Tracy,
National Youth Parliamentarian overseeing Kingston and St. Andrew. I am also in the field of psychology counseling and education. And just to piggyback on what you were saying before, currently we have new ongoing counselors leaving the Michael, right? Currently unemployed. My question to you is this, Minister. Right now, seeing this pandemic that is upon us, right? And such a heavy hand is placed on mental health. And during this period, our counselors are not being utilized. So my question is, how are we, as the minister, how is it that the counselors are not being utilized in such a time like this? And what suggestion do you have in how the ministry can utilize us as counselors, guidance counselors within the school system?
Schools. Okay,
Yes.
gotcha. Yeah.
How can we interject these counselors in helping the students? Because I believe that this is a detrimental time that is in need of guidance counselors, and we have a full batch of students leaving the prestigious Michael as counselors not being utilized.
Got you.
All right.
I'm going to go on this side now. I see that gentleman there, and then I see that gentleman, and I come back and then close off with 2 more questions and we respond. Yes.
First Minister, I'd like to applaud the initiative just to have us here to be part of the conversation. I also realize that a lot of us inside here doesn't represent geographical communities, and I want to also suggest that we also engage community leaders like Citizens Association presidents to have them train, even the issue around mental health, to have them train and how to be better able to deal with this. I also believe training community members, it will also help in the fight and it will have the conversation going. I want to make reference to persons who are even traveling in these communities. I think community leaders will have a better eye watch and eye look out for them instead of having the police. I traveled here last month and it was after the 21 days the police officer showed up, and you were at liberty to basically do anything. So I'm just saying, if you have community leaders being a part of the fight, if you have them trained to be part of the fight. I also want to piggyback on what Christina said, like when we leave here today to have the conversation going, is to make sure that a team is in place and information
that's where we're headed.
Is accessible to us so we can continue engaging, because I think engaging and sending out information is the method to how we're going to.
We're going to move on quickly now. Remember, keep the questions tight for me. Yes, sir.
Good afternoon, everyone. Representing JMVY and UTech Association of Dental Students. I had a suggestion the group of people at risk in terms of children with special needs. Is it that we could bring in teachers who teach those people who are qualified to train the youth that we have here, or get some other youth trained so that we can go into these schools with children at risk and teach them?
Thank you very much. Anyone else online with a question, that is? Any? No? Okay. All right. Last question on this side and we'll finish. All right. 2 last ones. You, sir. And then you, and that's it.
All right. Greetings, Minister. Najeen Yunus here from the National Youth Parliament and the Jamaica Union of Tertiary Students. Now, I want to zone in on the implications that were mentioned earlier about learning regression. And as you've rightly mentioned, a lot of students are finding that learning online is not the ideal situation for the teaching and learning process. So a lot of institutions are also sharing a similar hope of possibly reopening shortly. So my first question to you is asking, what is the Ministry of Health and Wellness's position as it relates to the commencement of schools in person? And are you currently able to support such a transition? And secondly, I have a strategy that I think is very important, because I hear lots of discussions and conversations surrounding having talks with young people about COVID-19. And I think especially in a time like this, in an age of information, a lot of students, we have to be very tactful and intentional in how we relate information to young people about COVID-19. So I think perhaps the ministry could launch a forum or something to do with me that we're able to reach young people both at a national and community level, and do it in such a manner that young people remain receptive to the information about COVID-19. That would really help in the long run.
Thank you. Yes, sir. Final question, sir.
Right. I just wanted to clarify firstly on Dr. Kellyan's presentation, what was the scope of her research? And secondly, of course, we know that the only sure preventative measure for COVID right now is a vaccine, and of course we're not sure when we're going to see that. So I was wondering, and to further on what Sir would have said earlier, I was wondering what else are we doing in terms of adapting our public spaces to aid in prevention of its spread.
Okay, great. All right, so you have asked a number of questions. The mental health issue came up again, and the whole idea of coping mechanisms is very much in the spotlight, using Ministry of Health to intervene in schools, the use of guidance counselors, and those mental health issues are being addressed in a number of ways. This is one such way, because we are recruiting and engaging young persons like yourselves who will provide the sort of a manual of, if you will, to guide some of the interventions, the very basic interventions that you could participate in or provide leadership for, just the listening, the basic support, the referencing to the health center or the mental health team for more technical support. That is what this is all about, and we believe it can assist. The question about the wider community of citizens association and so on, there is an initiative dealing with that. Yesterday I was online for 2 parishes. We had over 130 persons online, community-based organizations, citizens association, the custos, the political representatives. So this is just one of several, and it involves that group also. The support that we give from Ministry of Health to the schools around mental health is ongoing. We actually intervene in the schools. We train the school nurse, the form teachers, even guidance counselors should be participating in that initiative. And the idea there is to recognize students who have issues. Normally we say they are deviants, they give trouble, they are troublemakers. Many of them have psychological issues and require support. And then we pull those, and there's a reference or a system to give additional support beyond just the school. And that is a deliberate strategy that we do, health with education, to advance that particular agenda. The children with special needs, there is a collaboration between health and education and special needs. I don't have all the details now, but in this period, it is difficult with children with special needs, because now it's more challenging to do online for people with special needs, as opposed to, it's difficult already with persons who don't have special needs. And so it really is a tough task, but there are experts in the field who provide support. And again, that's an education ministry purview with the support of health. And I know they're working on it. I can't give you a lot of details on it at this point in time, but we can follow up on that. And then the issue of there's another question about school. What is the Ministry of Health doing the school, whether or not face-to-face school, what our position is on that? I think you asked that question. Our position is, it is always the ideal. I don't think anybody can disagree with that. We have put protocols in place to guide the resumption of face-to-face. It's about risks and managing risk, because there is no risk-free situation. The truth is that face-to-face was not recommended because of the risk of the community transmission and the impact on students and their parents and so on at home. And we felt that it could become very difficult to manage and would cause the virus to spread more rapidly, and you could end up with all the population being in the hospitals, and the hospitals become overwhelmed. So it really is about how you manage the risk to try and get through this phase, and then as quickly as possible you resume. But all the schools with education and health working together have had protocols that have been established. If you go to a school now, you'll see the physical distancing for lines, the wash stations that have been put in, the isolation area spaces. So a lot of work has gone in to that. In terms of the clarification around Kerry-Ann, she'll speak to that. But the issue of vaccines and what else? One of we have signed up for any safe vaccine to be used as a country. But we don't anticipate that you'll have a vaccine for another year or maybe longer. And so what really ought to happen is for us to use this risk to redefine how we exist within our society. And it has to factor in a lot stronger the infection prevention and control measures. So I certainly see that there's going to be a new norm established, which will overcome some of the risks that we now have to confront. So the mask wearing is going to be with us for a little while. The physical distancing has to be reinforced. The sanitization has to be reinforced. The more consistent cleaning at the workplace or workspace has to be reinforced. And there are other measures that will become more the norm than the exception. Over time, we'll get used to it. Over time, there'll be adjustments once we see the back of COVID. But I don't see that happening in the very near future, which is why leadership on the ground at all levels is going to be important to push that narrative on that line. Carrie Ann, maybe you want to answer that last question about the source or the, what was it, the testing, the pool from which you drew your samples and so on?
Right. So the scope of the study, we drew our 505 households based on socioeconomic level and area, whether urban, rural. So we conducted what would be formerly known as a stratified random sample for those households that were included in the study. What we also did was ensure that it mirrored the final sample mirrored the proportions that we would have seen based on those two variables in the entire country. And we would have gotten that information from the survey of living conditions, which would have been produced by Statin. I hope I'm answering your question.
I think so. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we have to close because I really need you to get back to your place of abode before curfew hours, and I hear it's raining outside and there's a little refreshment that I'd like you to partake in. Listen, I think this has been an amazing event, and I want to clap all of you for your participation. I want to say a big thank you to the speakers who presented, to the organizers, the team with Sujay and Nicole and the rest of my team and the Ministry of Health team for helping to pull this together. My takeaway from this is that we want to continue, right? Anybody disagree? Anybody agree with that? Let me see your hand if you agree that we should continue this dialogue. And okay, good. So I have some converts here. If I was a pastor, I would have baptized a lot of people, right? And online, I want to thank you for being attentive and staying on. We have quite a number of persons online, and I know you're online from far. Manchester, St. Elizabeth, Clarendon, Montego Bay. We wish you were here, but this is the new norm, and we appreciate your participation. The idea from here is the following. One, we've registered everybody. So we're going to create a group. We're going to break those groups out into parishes, as was said earlier. And we're going to establish a core team that we will add to as time progresses, and we're going to feed you with information. So we're going to give you information and updates on COVID. We're going to give you a little script or manual to look amongst yourself as to how you can approach providing some support at the community level to a young person, to an older person, to your peers. We're going to ask you for some sort of feedback which would follow through on that. We're going to try and look at a branding arrangement, so when you go out there, you have your vest or whatever to say, I'm part of this core team that I'm getting involved in and participate to push this message as the president of this group or that group. And we are going to solicit from you ideas at any point that could enhance this experience. And to the extent that we can provide other forms of incentives, I intend to speak with my colleagues and so on to see how that could work. But we need your participation. We need your attention to be focused among the other things you have to do on this. And we need your strength. So you have to engage in those coping mechanisms also. So you will hear from us with the follow-up. And again, I want to thank you for coming. I want to thank you for participating. And I think, again, that our official start of this youth COVID response team is now in effect. Consider yourselves agents of the COVID response. Thank you very much, and good luck in your respective endeavors. Thank you.
Jamaica, home of the resilient, passionate and hard-working. A people and a nation who have achieved and defied all odds, working